Hey, what is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So if you're new here, go ahead and hit the like button for me, hit the subscribe button for me. As I said, it really helps out the channel, and let's get right into this video. So in this video, we're going to be covering basically why you should start investing in your 20s and why it's so important to start very young investing and how that can set you up for obviously the rest of your life. Now, we're going to be talking about a bunch of different topics within this video because I believe this video entails quite a bit. But by the end of this video, I think you're going to have a really good understanding of why it's so important. So first off, let's go ahead and backtrack just a step. When you were taught by your parents to do something when you're young, a lot of times that sticks with you, right? And it's because habits that we build over time as humans become habits long term. And when you're starting to learn how to invest, right? It's important to not only get into good habits, but to also set goals. To set goals young and to start working on good habits as young as possible, because those habits will be instilled with you for the rest of your life. Now, we're going to break down the math here in a second, but you should understand that when you're saving, right? Most of your goals you should be trying to achieve, right? So, and you should always be coming up with goals on your savings, on your investments, and what you actually plan on hitting. It's super important to do this because it allows you as not only a human or an investor, but someone who is able to actually retire at a decent age, right? Because for most of us, the goal long term is actually to retire. Like, it's not to work forever, right? Because obviously we want to enjoy our life, right? We want to be able to go places, see things. And I think that's what video is more or less about, because when you understand investing, it can set you up for obviously the rest of your life. Now, let's break down the math here, because I know everybody's going to be asking about this, right? So what we're going to do right now, I'm going to refresh this. This is basically what's called a compound interest calculator. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put two numbers in. Okay. Now, let's say the average person, or let's say person A, starts investing at age 30. Okay. And they plan on retiring at age 65, which is a normal retirement age. Okay. So basically, they're going to have 35 years to grow their principal. Okay. So we're going to type in 35 years. We're going to type in a current principal. Let's say they have $10,000 to start said account. So we're going to put in $10,000. And let's say every single year they contribute $5,000. Okay. And we're going to give them an interest rate of about, let's just say 10% to make it really easy. Okay. Most of the time it'll probably be 8%, but let's do 10% just to make it very easy and make the math a little more simple, okay? All right, so that's going to be $1.7 million. That is a very good chunk of change, right? For most Americans, $1.7 million would be a very good amount of money to obviously sustain themselves off of right now. However, you have to understand this is money in the future, and that money is going to be worth quite a bit less in the future. But let's go ahead and let's say we started at age 20 instead of age 30, which is going to now give us 45 years to compound. We are not going to change anything else, okay? Everything else is going to remain exactly the same. It is now $4.6 million, almost $4.7 million. Now, I'm going to even go a little bit further with this math, okay? So Forbes basically did a study on this as well. And basically, to illustrate and imagine two college graduates with access to tax-deferred investments and accounts earning 8% a year, the first investor saves $250 a month for 10 years, okay, for a total of $30,000. Then doesn't make another investment for the next 30 years, okay? At the end of those 40 years, remember, he only invested $30,000, okay? And it turned into $509,000. The second investor doesn't invest for the first 10 years of the same amount of the 40 period. Instead, they contribute $250 a month for the next 30 years. Okay, meaning they did not start right away. They contributed $90,000 and it only ended up being $375,000. That is the power of time and compound interest. So if you are in your 20s, if you don't have it figured out yet, if you don't understand where you're at or what you're doing or how you're gonna your entire life is going to be set up, the one thing you need to understand is right now you have the one thing in your hands, the power of compound interest. And if you have a decent job, if you more or less are still going to college, it doesn't matter. The one thing you need to understand is compound interest is so powerful that right now you should be taking advantage of it. And every extra $500 or whatever you have to throw into some type of investment, like an S&P 500 index fund or something, goes a long way. As you can see the difference here, I mean, just $30,000 turned into $509,000, right? Huge compounding. Now, I'm going to take this even a step further, guys. Not only does obviously getting into good habits set you up for the rest of your life, not only does investing in the first, 10 years of obviously your adulthood set you up for the rest of your life, but one thing that you're really going to notice here is that I don't know if necessarily when we get older, right, the generation that's coming up right now, if Social Security and stuff like that is going to be around. Here's why, okay? People are living longer and longer, which basically means that as people live longer and longer, the workforce, which is obviously probably us right now, that pays into Social Security, taxes, whatever, needs to basically put the retirees on their back and carry them, right? That's basically what happens. It's basically Peter paying Paul, right? And even though Paul is 40 years older and retired and gets less income, right? And maybe doesn't need as much income because normally they have a downsized house or whatever. Basically, the way it works is flawed, okay? If humans lived the exact same time and there was no extension of life, right? Then basically when you retire at an age of like 65 or 67, in a sense, it would be a perfect system, right? But however, humans are living longer and longer, which basically means that they need more and more cash in retirement to be able to retire, right? Which basically means that the workforce needs to produce more and more cash to pay those retirees that already paid into Social Security. It's basically the government's version of a giant Ponzi scheme. And Ponzi schemes, if you're not familiar, basically always end bad. And it's basically the intent of someone who invested first, right, in the company or whatever it is, right, basically gets paid by the later investors, people who are investing now, which is basically what Social Security is. And as great as it sounded and as maybe as ethical as it's being ran, no matter what, because humans are living longer and longer, I don't believe that Social Security will last. Now, that sounds like I'm being a naysayer or something like that. However, when you work out the math, eventually it just doesn't make sense. It ends up being less and less and less. And Social Security, if you actually look into it, the amount of funds that is being contributed in there keeps going down pretty much every single year. It's basically this giant fund, right, where all this money is kind of stored there. And when it's stored there, it gets slowly depleted to those retirees. It keeps getting depleted more and more and more. And that's a very bad sign, obviously, for anyone looking to retire in the future. But the good news is you have a lot of other options, okay? You have a 401k. Now, Grant Cardone calls a 401k basically a scam. And I'm going to break this down and try to explain to you why he calls it a scam. Okay, I'm not sure if you know Grant Cardone, but huge real estate investor. 401k is kind of scammy. Basically, a 401k, in a sense, is a retirement account where you can go ahead and you put your money in there and you can get a return on it. Maybe you could just be in an S&P 500 index fund or something, some type of ETF that allows you to get a return in the market over time. Now, where 401ks basically get scammy is when you need to pull out for some type of life-changing or life-altering event. The penalties that some of these people have to pay to get their money out is absolutely ridiculous. Because at the end of the day, it is your money, right? You shouldn't be penalized for having your money, right? That's like if the bank said, no, sorry, man, you can't have your money. But if you want it, you just pay us like 10 grand and you can have your 100 grand. No, I just keep my money at home if that's the case, right? And that's basically how a 401k works, okay? Let's say, you went through some life-altering event. You got cancer. Someone in your family got cancer, right? And you needed access to extra money that you never thought you would need, right? It's money that you thought was going towards your retirement. You would never need it again. However, things in life happen. And I've seen this happen time and time again to actually really good people. And basically people who depleted their 401k or had to pull out their 401k literally just to survive, right? And however, there should be some type of thing set up where if you have some type of life-altering event that you would be able to pull out your money. You would be able to pull out without being penalized, right? For surviving, right? For literally living. However, that's not how a 401k works. You pull out before the age of 55, I believe it is, and you pay massive fees. And normally, most of those fees, you end up paying back all the interest that you would have accrued through that time as well. However, if you get an employee match, and this is probably the only time that it makes sense to ever invest anything ever into a 401k, is if you get an employee match. If you get an employee match and your employer is matching a certain percentage of whatever you put in, then it is not a bad idea to put in whatever the match is. And normally the match is only a couple $1,000s a year, and that's why it makes sense, okay? And the rest of your money you could put in a Roth IRA or a brokerage account, okay? Now, a normal brokerage account is something where you go ahead and, you have access to all your stocks. You pay your taxes every year or your long-term taxes, whatever, and you have access to everything. You're not going to pay any penalties. It is your money. You can do whatever you want with it. Now, a Roth IRA is a little bit different, okay? A Roth IRA has a little bit different retirement age. I don't remember the exact retirement of a Roth IRA, but it's very similar to a 401k. However, you basically pay all the taxes up front on a Roth IRA, okay? And because you've paid all the taxes up front, you really don't pay any taxes on the Roth, right? And that's what's so beneficial about a Roth. Basically, in a sense, a Roth IRA, you can contribute up to like $4,000 or $5,000. It changes from year to year, but it's like $4,000 or $5,000 a year. And in 30, 40 years, you can go ahead, take that money out, and you can go ahead and obviously use it. And the thing is, a Roth IRA, one thing that's actually pretty good about them is they normally don't have massive penalties like a 401k. They normally don't take all your money if you need it for a life-altering event. And normally they don't really penalize all your interest either. So a Roth IRA is definitely a better investment for most people than a 401k ever will be. A 401k was a great idea. However, in theory, it is a very scammy kind of gross account, and that's the thing. So Roths, definitely a plus for me. I would definitely consider investing in a Roth if you haven't already, or you could just invest in a regular brokerage account. They're fine as well. But yeah, you definitely need to start investing in your 20s. And this is why it's so important, because not only are you going to need to obviously retire someday, but guys, your compound interest is so much more powerful in your early 20s than it is in the rest of your life. And as much as we think things like a Social Security is going to be around forever. I don't believe that's the case. I believe that Social Security will be going away someday. And with everything kind of thrown in the loop, and basically the entire way this country is set up, pretty much all countries are set up, I do believe that investing in your 20s will give you the not only the best return in the stock market overall, however, it will also set you up the best for the rest of your life. And that's pretty much it for this video. That's all I wanted to cover, is why it's so important to start investing in your 20s, guys. It is super important. So if you haven't already started investing, there should be a link down below that you can click right now to go ahead and open your first brokerage account with Webull. You'll go ahead and get 4 free stocks. All you got to do is deposit $100 with them. And if you did get some value out of this video, guys, go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, see you.